Everybody, I'd like to introduce you to Angie Auldridge. She's a lovely mama that I met through the Maryland Partners in Policymaking program. We were a graduate of 2019, correct?
Yeah. Yep. 2019.
Okay. Lost a little time there with COVID, obviously. So
yeah.
We met so many lovely people through that program. I'm so glad that the state of Maryland participates in it. And it really helped us as advocates, I think, more of a foothold on how policy actually works. So complex. But I'm just thrilled to have you here having this conversation today because you're just one of those mom warriors, and you're such a sweet, kind, humble person. So if you would, please just tell us a little bit about yourself and your family.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm just delighted and excited for your podcast. I think this is perfect and needed and in a space where people need to be able to talk about the really, really hard things. We often, sugarcoat our lives and portray the highlight reels, on social media. So it's nice to have an opportunity and a platform to talk about the really, really hard things. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm Angie, and I am the mother of 3 kiddos. I have a daughter who's 10, and then I have 2 boys. Mark is my middle, and he is 8, and I've got Luke, who is 4. And my oldest daughter, my daughter Jillian, so all of my kids have some type of diagnoses. Well, I say all, the 2 older ones. The jury's still out on the younger one. We have to wait to see what happens with him. But my daughter, we've been through a lot of different kind of things with her, from severe anxiety, panic, phobias. And then in the last year, we got a diagnosis of pandas. For her, which explains quite a bit all the panic and sheer terror that she has dealt with over the years. And then my middle child, Mark, he is my complex medical needs kiddo. He has autism, epilepsy, a rare brain disease called SCN2A. We just learned he has severe osteoporosis and a number of other movement type disorder issues that are coming out of the woodwork now. And we always say Mark has a doctor for every body part. So we have a lot of specialists that work together to keep Mr. Mark going. And I work full time. I have been in higher education for almost 20 years. I have been in the college advising world for that entire time. And now I am the manager of an advising and registration department at our local community college. And I love what I do because it's a very big departure from my home life. So it's a nice break from the chaos that is the disability world. Prior to my current role, I worked for 5 years as a college disability advisor. So I work with adults providing accommodations and supports in a college setting. And that was probably one of my favorite jobs I've ever had. And during my time there, that was when I did Partners in Policymaking when we met. And from there, I just kind of launched into all kinds of disability-related things. You join one thing, and then it snowballs into other things. I joined as a member of the Maryland Developmental Disabilities Council. I am a board member for the ARC of Washington County, where I live, and I'm on several other local committees that advocate for people with disabilities. And my podcast, Embracing Holland, that I co-host with my dear friend, Megan Barrett. We launched that really as a result of meeting all the wonderful people in Partners in Policymaking. So I just wanted to showcase all the marvelous people and activities and books and ideas and nonprofits and all the things that have kind of cropped out of embracing this special needs life that we all didn't think that we would be a part of. So that is pretty much it. I write a blog. I've started that as sort of like a self-therapeutic thing in 2015, right after my son was diagnosed. And it's just kind of gone from there. I've been asked to write for other people and write different articles, and I love writing. So it's my sort of, that's my therapy. So Those are the highlights.
That's wonderful. You have so much experience and have built such a strong knowledge base through those experiences. And I would imagine, I mean, here, and for those who are listening and do not live in Maryland, Washington County is pretty suburban, for lack of better words, right? I would imagine resources are a little bit challenging to come by.
Yes, we are. We are definitely, I would say, I often refer to us as a resource desert. We are very lucky to be near big cities like, Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. Those are big compared to where we are. I mean, what's great is we're an hour and a half from those cities, so it's not too far of a stretch to get to specialists, but it's definitely a burden if you had to go for therapy daily, which we did do for 2 years because that was the closest we could find. So we're in a rural part of Maryland, and there's not a whole lot out here.
I just want to stop it. Think about that for a moment, because for families that are in our shoes, we rely so much on support and resources and therapies, and certainly COVID has put all of that to a grinding halt / brand new perspective. But thank God you live, although it's very rural, on the outskirts of a metropolitan city like Baltimore, because there are so many resources. Like, I feel so fortunate every day. I'm also about an hour outside the city, not quite as far out as you, but, you still have to drive an hour to get everywhere. Thank God we have the resources that we do, being close enough to a city, because I think, what do people do who you live perhaps maybe in Montana or some remote parts of the country where the closest, physician or therapeutic, ABA office or school, specialized school is, hours away. It's something that I think about a lot. And although may not be the perfect sort of structure for our kids, because they are so complex, and although we may have to go to 10 different places, at least we have it within driving distance, right?
Absolutely. And I have friends out in the Midwest where it's like a few hour flight, to get to things.
Wow.
And to major hospitals. And, so I feel very fortunate. I've said that many times, to be as close as we are to Johns Hopkins and to Kennedy Krieger, some major hospitals. And even like we've gone up to CHOP in Philadelphia for second opinions. And, we are very lucky to live on the East Coast and to have access. And, that's been instrumental in getting Mark the care, specialized care that he's needed.
Yeah. So I know you have been through so much with your little guy. So let's just kind of go into our conversation. I'd like to ask, what difficult topic among all of them, there's so many to pick from, but what difficult topic would you like to discuss today?
So I think the thing that keeps me up at night, and let me just give a little context for my son and his care. So my daughter, I had mentioned, has pandas and anxiety and panic disorder, but for all intents and purposes, and for what we can tell at this point, she will be able to live independently. When she is an adult, we feel pretty confident she will go to college, and she's very smart and capable, independent, and she will likely not be living with me forever. That is not the case for Mark. So like a lot of special needs families with disabilities, I think what the difficult topic I struggle with when I was thinking about preparing for this interview, I could talk about pica, eating non edible items. We'd struggle with that. I could talk about wandering and elopement and no fear of anything dangerous, and feces, fecal smearing. I could write chapters of books on all those topics, but I think the thing that becomes challenging really is knowing that your child will live with you forever and they will outlive you. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is that when I talk to friends about when you just kind of have generalized conversations, not necessarily centered around me and my specific needs and my family, people will say things like, enjoy them. These years go so fast, and, they'll be gone before you know it. And one reality we've had to sort of accept and endure is he will be with me until I die, until, there will be no just empty nester, right? That's not a thing for the type of needs and level of independence for Mark. And sometimes my husband will sort of wistfully talk about what the three of us growing old together. And it's sweet in that moment, but it's incredibly daunting because the older Mark gets, the bigger he gets, and the more difficult he is to handle. Because in addition to all those other sort of difficult topics that I mentioned, Mark also has, a tendency to have some aggression and some, behaviors that when they're 2 or 3, you can stop them by picking them up. When they're 8, as he is now going to be 9 soon, that's a lot harder to do. And I imagine when he's 18 or 19, that's going to be even harder to do. So knowing that I have physical limitations, my husband has physical limitations. I mean, we're not, aged yet, but we will be. And what does that look like? And if either one of us develops a health problem, what is that going to look like? And having to care for him. And so then that leads me to, we really are alone in this. I mean, you have your network of special needs parents, but I don't know about you, but I struggle with knowing who would care for my kids if something were to happen to me, because that's asking someone to accept a life sentence.
Yes. And I was going to say, this is such a powerful topic, and I'm kind of wowed right now because this is so incredibly brave to tackle this head on. It is a discussion that I think needs to happen more often. I think it is something that terrifies every single special needs parent, but I don't think it's said out loud enough because it's that terrifying.
Yeah, nobody wants to talk about it. I mean, it's when your kids are little, right? And you have maybe you live we're blessed to live near both of our sets of parents. So, and both of our sets of parents are living. Now, my biological father has passed, but I have a wonderful stepdad who is for everything he is my dad. And my parents live close by. My in-laws live close by. Everyone's very involved with my kids. But they're all in their 60s, headed towards 70, and they all have had their various health problems. I mean, 2 months after Mark was diagnosed with his rare genetic disease, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. So very quickly, I realized, oh, no. I thought I was, I had people doing this with me. I may not. And it brings a level of background anxiety that's just always kind of there. And I think that, not to make this about COVID, because I'm sure everyone is tired of talking and hearing about COVID, but that sort of that's just one more thing to kind of be around there. Oh my goodness, what would happen if, my husband who's, a healthy, 38-year-old ends up on a ventilator? And then I'm a single mom, and I've watched some single moms go through raising a child with complex medical needs, and it does not look fun. I mean, to do it by yourself and get no breaks. So that I think is the hardest thing is, not having people, you have your parents. And I've even asked people this, other people with kids with disabilities, who's going to take your kids if you die? And I've gotten some various answers my brother or my sister would, and I have a sister who I adore, and she's 12 years younger than me. So yay, she'll live, hopefully she'll be around longer than I will. But I don't know how you ask someone to completely change their life and center it around their nephew.
Yeah.
I haven't had the courage to have the conversation, and I hope that I live to be in my 80s and it's never an issue. But, things happen, and that is the thing that bothers me, and is probably, of all the things that I've had to deal with, when it comes to some of the harder, yucky in the moment things, like cleaning up poop and surfaces and places you didn't think you'd clean up poop. You do kind of get desensitized to that after a while, and it just becomes sadly routine, like you know what to do when those things happen. I have not been able to come to grips with this particular topic. So that when you said, about something that's like a hard topic, that to me, this is probably it.
Yeah. I mean, it's the thing that keeps you up at night. So what immediately came to my mind when you started talking about this was, and this is a hard thing for me to say and admit, but I'm putting it out there because that's exactly what the point of this podcast is. But I don't have a will. I have been terrified to make a will because I don't know the fill in the blank. I don't know who those people are. I mean, there's probably like 3 people that I could easily make an executor or, in charge of finances. Yeah. I even have one of my best friends in the world kindly offered that role. I didn't even have to ask, but she said she'd be glad to do it.
That's amazing.
And it was incredibly humbling and gratifying and sigh of relief just because I knew that she could do it, was capable, responsible, and would see that everything was right that needed to be right. But I don't, again, the fill in the blanks, I don't know who those people are, the same as what you're saying. And there isn't anyone, and I've gone through everyone, just as many other parents out there have. There is not anyone that could take this role on, except, and I say this with a tremendous amount of, there's hesitation, there's heaviness, there's guilt. But if some catastrophic thing would happen, the only person that I know would be capable of taking care of Colin in the future would be my oldest son, Aiden. And that is a tremendous, trying to use my words so carefully here because we love these children with all of our hearts and soul.
Oh, absolutely.
But it is so much to ask of another, and especially an older sibling.
Absolutely. And I had that same thought about Jillian. And honestly, I mean, to be completely transparent, when we were talking about growing our family, that was one of the reasons why we tried for a third kid. And I think a lot of people thought I was crazy because my hands were very full with the 2 children that I had. And we had a third because I wanted Jillian to have a buddy to take care of Mark, one day. So I get it. And I don't ever want that to become necessarily their life. But at the same time, they live with him. They know him. They know. And the other day I was noticing that Mark, he keeps his iPad up super loud. And so Luke's on the couch trying to watch a movie. He's not annoyed at all. I was like taking pictures and video of this. Like you've got like this really obnoxiously loud, whatever he was watching on his iPad playing, interrupting Luke watching his movie. And Luke didn't care. Both of my children are very tolerant. They're not bothered. Yeah. Like it is a very special way of shaping them as people. And so you're absolutely right. When I think about who would get, the honor, the privilege, the responsibility, it would be his siblings. And, what does that look like for their life? Because I know you don't want to refer to it as a burden. That's what it feels like as a parent to say to your other child or your other children, you're gonna want to do what you want with your life, but you have your brother, And so that I think is incredibly hard. And I feel on the flip side because Mark has he has a genetic disease that it's rare. We don't know a lot about it. And so when I have these sort of like rabbit hole, start thinking about, oh my gosh, what are my kids' future going to look like? Then I'm whipped back into the reality. What if Mark doesn't make it to adulthood? And then I have this other like side of guilt. Like I can't imagine my life without him, And so it's just like this torturous, awful cycle where I should be cherishing these moments with him. And I do cherish my time with him, but I'm also terrified of the future. So, it's this really kind of, and it's hard to have this conversation with your friends that don't have children with disabilities, because there are definitely lots of things in life where we can be empathetic and we can imagine what that might feel like. This is hard to imagine, I think. I've had other friends tell me that they've asked other sets of friends to be their like caretakers of their children should something happen to them. And that's painful for me because I realized no one will ever ask us to care for their kids because they know how much I have on my plate. And that feels weird too, you know, like that I can't have that closeness with my friends because, oh, well, we know that you have, you have Mark, so you can't take on our kids. And, there's just a lot of layers, to this topic.
It certainly is. And you definitely hit multiple sides of it, multiple angles. I actually hadn't even thought about the last point of someone asking me, to be there, to take care of their children should something happen to them. And that's probably because I'm so entrenched in this environment of, raising Colin and muddling through all of the complexity of everything involved with it, that it wasn't even on my radar that could. Thank you for bringing up that valid point. It's so complicated, and there's many, many layers to this. We have very well-intentioned people in our lives who love us very much. And I'm going to tell you that, my mom is a walking saint, and she helps me tremendously. She loves both of her grandchildren more than life, but literally she will help me until she physically can't get out of the bed or physically isn't breathing because she loves Colin so much and they're so close and she understands him so well. And I am so grateful for that. But on the flip side of it, there's some guilt that she's retired and she's helping me pretty much daily. And she should be, I don't know, traveling or, and she would say I wouldn't have this any other way. Because sadly, we lost my dad a few years ago. So her partner's no longer with us. And, why does, she has friends and everything, but she wouldn't have it any other way. But it brings me back to something that I learned kind of early on after the diagnosis and walking this path and getting into the advocacy world. It was such a profound point, and I never forgot. It was sort of one of those aha moments and stops you dead in this track. For folks out there who are not parents of kids with different needs or complex medical conditions who can't quite wrap their brain around the complexity of our lives and being a parent/caregiver. This diagnosis affects 3 generations of people. It affects the grandparents who try everything they can, give support in whatever way, whether it's physical, whether it's financial, or whether it's just emotional. But it affects them, of course. It affects the parents, of course. Their lives change immediately and drastically. And then, of course, it affects the actual child forever. As we know life, it will continue to affect all 3 generations forever. And it's so profound when you think about it that way, because it's not just one person who has a couple challenges that, sees a couple doctors and does a couple therapies and then they're going to be fine. It's a very different situation.
Yeah. And, it's interesting when you talked about how you feel like your mom, should be traveling and seeing the world and doing what retired people do in their, sort of twilight years. And it's funny because that's the same sort of feeling I feel about my kids. Like they should be off exploring the world, but just like your mom wouldn't have it any other way. I'd like to think that maybe when my kids are older, they'll say like, they can't imagine Mark not being with them, so, and, we have to remember that our kids are these beautiful, miraculous gifts that have taught us so much. I mean, I know that, when you were on our podcast and we talked a little bit about, the effects on our lives, but it's changed us. And I think in very profound ways. And I think for me personally, it's made me, it's completely changed me. I mean, I had the bricks of my personality before all this happened, but, it has touched a place of humanity inside of me that I don't think I would have. The ability to really understand hard and to empathize with other people who may be going through something really, really difficult that may not be my difficult, but I can really imagine what that might feel like. And so I'm grateful for the blessing that is.
Absolutely. And I think that our support system, and for lack of better words, our community and tribe, if you will, is unfortunately growing exponentially with the rates continuing to go up. So while I never, ever want to see, if we could, sort of, wave that magic wand and not have any more diagnosis or complex medical conditions in the world, absolutely I'd wave that wand, because I wouldn't want people to experience what we have had to go through and our children have endured in their life. However, we can't do that. So I guess the positive side, kind of what you were alluding to, is thank God we have a lot of people, and in many cases strangers, who live across the United States that we connect with, because for you, maybe they have the same, their child has the same genetic condition that Mark has. And for me, maybe they have, the complexities of having seizures and pandas going on at the same time, and they've just been doing it longer and can help support me better. That is a blessing. That is one thing. I guess that's one positive thing about social media, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And something you said just sparked a memory that I had. I had been asked to speak at the National Autism Association National Conference, and I was honored to go, but it did not end well. I spoke there a few years ago. This was before COVID and we could gather in large numbers in person. And I was speaking with Spark, which is, the genetic sort of group with Kennedy Krieger doing the largest worldwide autism study. And I was speaking about the benefits of genetic testing for families with autism and how important that was, because it could lead to targeted precision medicine. And I used the word cure. And there was a gentleman in the back of the room who is very well known in the autism community who very much disagreed with what I had to say. And he, and my husband stood up next to me, God bless him, got on the microphone and he said, we would be very, very grateful if our son could articulate himself like you one day, and what we're talking about is finding treatment and finding, a cure, for lack of a better word, to allow our son to live the fullest life possible, not to change his personality. If he wants to eat veggie sticks, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, whatever. But we want him to be able to live until adulthood. We want him not to die in his sleep from a seizure. We want him to not break bones at the rate that he has broken bones. I think sometimes autism can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. And in our world, it has meant a life of medical limitations. And so just like we all would want to cure cancer, I would want to cure this. So I just wanted to point that out, because it is not because I want to change. It's not that I don't embrace neurodiversity, but yes, I would cure this if I could, because it would allow Mark not to be so frustrated with communication. It would allow him to be able to express himself in a more functional way and not without the need for aggression, right? And keep him safe. I mean, my goodness, how many choking incidents have we had? How many broken arms because his bones are brittle? He's a danger and to himself. And so when I talk about, when I hear anyone mention cure, I think of that before I think of, making everyone normal and not autistic, So I just wanted to, in case a self-advocate or someone with autism is listening, I just wanted to point that out, that, that's my stance on how I would want to help my son in the future.
I'm so glad that you said that, and it was beautifully spoken. It is a very sensitive word among the community, For sure, our autism community is divided, but absolutely, Angie, I agree with you, and I would do the same. I would absolutely do anything to cure Colin for the same exact reason, because we're talking about a very different autism with these medical complexities on top of it.
Yes.
So beautifully said. Thank you for saying that. We're not, unfortunately, going to solve anything. This podcast is not about, okay, here's the question, here's the answer, here's the problem, here's the solution. I wish it were. But what we can do is just talk about the really difficult things that we know a plethora of other families are thinking about, and we can have great conversations, and hopefully it'll encourage these conversations more in the community, and we can continue to better support one another. And hopefully, I don't know, if it helps one person out there, this conversation was worth every second, right? Well, it was already worth every second because it helped me talking to you. So thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, if nothing else, my mission in my writing and my podcasting is to let people know that you are not alone. And that may not be powerful to everyone in every moment, but sometimes it is. Sometimes it's nice to hear someone else explain maybe what you're thinking. And maybe you don't have anyone to say it to. So I know that that's been my experience listening to different podcasts and writing, reading different blogs over the years.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I think this might be a good part of our conversation to kind of shift into the light.
Yeah.
So we have lots of, challenges along our journey, but we also definitely have many golden nuggets along the way. I think everyone in Maryland should know that term golden nugget, if not everyone across the country. But it's those really special, wonderful things that we have to celebrate every day, no matter what. And every day, no matter who you are, there is something.
Absolutely.
So let's shift into the light and let's talk a little bit about just you personally and what you do to shift into that light. So may I ask, what is your favorite book?
So I am a big reader, and Meg was teasing me on our season 3 opener because I was like, I have to tell you about something exciting. And it was basically like, is it a book? Yes. So I love to read, and I just have to say, like, my favorite book that I have, and you have to listen to it, and I just talked about this on our podcast, but I'm going to plug it on yours.
Yeah.
Green Light by Matthew McConaughey. Have you heard of this book?
I have not heard of the book.
Okay.
It's not a movie, is it?
It's not a movie. So it's essentially like an alternative-ish memoir of Matthew McConaughey. And listen, I am not like a movie, I watch movies, but it's not like he's like my favorite actor and I watch everything he's in and, he's like the best. Like, that's not how I feel about it. It was a friend of mine who was like, you have got to listen to this audiobook, and you have to not read it. You have to listen to it because it's narrated by Matthew McConaughey. And I think that we can all agree that Matthew McConaughey has a lovely voice. I mean, he's even in the Calm app. But Green Light was, I'm just finishing listening to it a second time. It was that good. It's just his take on his life. He's had some traumatic things happen to him over time, and he's had some sort of down and out bad luck, but his optimism and the way he looks at it and takes something positive out of every negative sort of circumstance. And he'll tell you a story, and then he'll say, like, at the end of the story, that he didn't end up where he thought he would, but he ended up with this great thing and green light. And it just made me, I think anyone parenting a child or going through something difficult, I think could really resonate with this book. And, if you're running around to therapy and you're in the car constantly, have a listen. And you don't have to buy it. I have the Libby app, which, links up to my local library. It was in there. So for free, I got to listen to Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights book. So that may not be like my favorite of all time, but that's my favorite right now. So
well, I'll definitely, I already have it written down and I'll add it to my list. Okay, great. So what would your dream vacation be?
So my dream vacation. So I am a big lover of period dramas. I mean, give me all the drama set in the 17 and 1800s. It just seemed like an interesting life back then. So I just binged through several series on Stars, but my favorite, and I think there's a number of things Meg makes fun of me for, but Outlander is I'm a huge fan. I've watched like every episode probably like 12 times, and I've read the books, and I'm in the middle of one of them now. And it's set in Scotland, and I would love to travel to Scotland just because it just looks beautiful and it's not here. So that would be my dream vacation. And I think I would either go with my husband. I thought about who I would take with me. Definitely not my children. And it would definitely be with like a really good friend, maybe someone else who loves Outlander, who would be like, wanting to go see like the Standing Stones, and, so that would be my dream vacation.
That sounds wonderful. I love that, Scotland. Okay, so what do you do for self-love?
So a few years ago, I read a book about creating rhythms, routines, and rituals in your life, and a lot around that. So reading that book and then listening to one of my favorite podcasts, the Lazy Genius podcast. It's all about finding what matters and being a genius about it and lazy about what doesn't matter. And so I have taken those principles, I have taken the sort of wisdom in the book, and I have created sort of little touch points throughout my week, each week, to create respite, because sometimes we can't wait 6 months for a respite weekend. And sometimes going away for a weekend doesn't completely fill our cup. You may have to do things a little more frequently to get benefit from having replenishing your soul. So little things that I do, if I know that I have to do something unpleasant, and that could mean anything from I'm not a big fan of going to kids' birthday parties. That's like the least favorite thing that I like to do. I don't know about other parents, but I hate it. I make my favorite cup of I'm a big herbal tea drinker. So if you like coffee, whatever, make your favorite drink, bring it with you. And then it takes the edge off of the unpleasant thing you're doing. So I'll make a cup of tea if I have to do, we're on home and hospital with Mark. So when I have to do his Google Meet and his Zoom, and, we are working on math, he hates math, I've got my chamomile tea, and I feel happy about that. I love audiobooks. So I will listen to audiobooks on my AirPods, and I'll put one AirPod in while I'm watching listening for my kids, but also got a wonderful story in my ear. I do little things like that. I paint my nails every Sunday. I pick a color that I love. It makes me happy. And I think that doing these little things, it may not be the long bubble bath that takes an hour and a half, but as long as you can kind of infuse your week with little things that make you happy, like if you love makeup, buy your favorite eyeshadow and wear that. I don't know, whatever kind of, and sometimes if I'm having a really bad day, I'll shop for bags on Etsy. I think what's really important for parents to remember is remember who they are, because the older your children get, and the deeper you get into the entrenchment of all the medical appointments and all the therapies and all the things, you find you lose yourself a little bit. And I think it's really a healthy thing to remember who you were before you had kids, who you were before a diagnosis, so that you can constantly try to look in the rearview mirror, remember that, and then say, you know what, I really love this particular music. I'm going to buy concert tickets to go, and I'm going to find somebody to watch my kids. That's important to me. I think respite and self-care can kind of often feel like going for a walk by yourself or taking a long bath, but maybe you don't like baths and maybe you don't like walks. What speaks to you, And so writing and podcasting, that fills my cup. Talking, to other people, that fills me up. Going to work. I often tell my coworker, I'm you don't get it. This is respite for me. Going to work, doing a job I love, so I feel like those are different things that I do to make sure that I stay with my cup filled.
I love that. And I love you use the word infuse. And I think that's such a perfect word to use, because sometimes in a given day or a stretch of days or weeks, that's all you can do is infuse moments.
Mm-hmm.
And so
you may only have 30 seconds. You might have a minute
Right.
where you're left alone. Do something in that minute, even if you're folding laundry or doing something unpleasant, like I said, like going to a kid's birthday party, you can find something that will make it, so that you're taking care of yourself in that moment.
Yes. Okay. And last question, what is your best advice for parents out there?
So, I often think about this. I've written some articles on this over the years, and it changes over time. And I think that I see a lot of parents having painful moments when they compare their children with their same age peers. And you will envy them as they're running their kids to sports practice or other extracurricular activities that your child will never do. And so I challenge you, other special needs parents, to consider the level of joy that you'll have when your child meets those inch stones, those little things that you prayed and you wished so hard for, because they will happen. And I promise the happy dance that you'll do when your child does something you've waited for so long will rival any home run or a concert or any performance that your friend's child would do. I'm telling you, like, the level of excitement, when Mark finally walked, because he was a very late walker, we were overjoyed. When he has talked and then lost words and talked and lost words, and every time the words come back, it is never lost on me. So just, you'll have celebrations. They're going to look different. You may not be sitting out in the cold for baseball games, like friends, but you'll have a therapy session and it'll be amazing. And you'll want to call all your friends and tell them everything that just happened. And it will happen with different things, because our kids develop and, they improve. They all do, in their ways. And I think that it's important to recognize that. So I would I watch young mamas in some of these support groups, and dads, but it's a lot of the mamas. We'll talk about how painful it is to see their friends' kids doing things that their child can't do. And I just challenge them to just think about what that might feel like to finally see them do something they didn't think they could.
That's really wonderful advice. And I also love that you use the word inch stone instead of milestone. It's so perfect context for our community, because those, going back to the other key word that we were using, those inch stones are like gold nuggets. Those, like you said, every time Mark says a word, and you are just so, your heart's just so filled. And I feel the same way, because Colin is a non-speaker, but he has spontaneous language. Every time I hear his voice, oh my God.
Music, right? It's magical. It's a whole different level of joy and excitement that I think because I have two children that talked on a sort of can speak. And every time they speak, it's not like I'm like clinging on to every one of their words. Right. But when Mark says something, it's like, oh, everybody, so, context.
That's lovely. That's right. Perspective's everything.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. Yes, things can be very difficult, but we can also find light in all of it.
Yes. And thank you so much for this opportunity. This was wonderful.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.